I didn't mean to call you. I'll call you back.
That is fine. No problem.
Okay, I have everything beside me.
Nancy, you're muted.
I said, I think we are in business, and I believe we are
Live.
live. Okay, very good. All right, little technical difficulty, no problem. And it is 6 o'clock and ready for the next Parent Academy. So welcome everyone, and I apologize for the little technical difficulty. But here we are, and we're so glad that you're all here. We have an amazing presentation tonight. Our presentation welcomes in May as Mental Health Awareness Month. So this is extra exciting. My name is Dr. Nancy Turner, and I am your Director of Mental Health. Tonight we have our co-host, Ms. Cindy Taubenkimmel. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you, Dr. Turner, and good evening, Rock Hill. As Dr. Turner said, my name is Cindy Taubenkimmel, and I'm the coordinator of ParentSmart, Rock Hill Schools Parent Education Partnership, where parents are at the heart of education.
Thank you, Cindy. So as we begin, and before I introduce Ms. Wright, I wanted to mention and talk about trials of life weighing you down. Maybe you listened to the morning show with Lucas in the morning, and we talked a little bit, not only about mental health awareness, but about making sure that if you make a mistake, you're able to embrace it, understand it, and then learn from it and look to the future. So as we talk about this, trials of life, the big question is, are the trials of life weighing you down? Have you fought insecurity, maybe domestic violence, addiction, or grief? Well, if your answer is yes, then you will be learning so much as we introduce and hear from Gail Wright, and she is going to share her testimony of how she learned joy comes in the morning. Let me tell you a bit about Miss Gail Wright. She is an educator, cosmetologist, salon owner of Gail I want to say it right, Estella Studio LLC. Hopefully that's right, in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and founder of Gail Estella Presents the Bald, Bold, and Beautiful. Personal insecurities related to hair prompted Gail to birth the Bald, Bold, and Beautiful movement, BBB. The mission of BBB to empower, uplift, and strengthen women to know they are beautiful with or without hair. As a result of her hair insecurities, this led to struggles with low self-esteem, abuse, and addiction. Gail Wright has a deeply profound and extremely moving journey of survivorship that will resonate with our Rock Hill community. Through it all, she is still standing. And tonight, she will share her journey with our Parent Academy viewers. So please welcome Miss Gail Wright.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Turner, again for having me. And again, my name is Gail Wright. I'm an educator, salon owner, speaker, and the founder of Gail Estella Hair Studio. The founder of Gail Estella Presents the Ball Bold and Beautiful, as Dr. Turner said. And our mission is to empower, uplift, and strengthen women to know that they are beautiful with or without hair. And I'm going to start my PowerPoint now. Okay. Excuse me one moment because I exited out and this is my first time doing this. Okay, here we go. Joy comes in the morning, enter. Insecurities. I always like to go back to, can you hear me, Dr. Turner?
We can hear you, but your PowerPoint is not up. You might want to try opening it again.
Yep, open it again. Mhm.
Okay, I see it. It says you are sharing the screen. Okay.
Okay, so X out where you're at, X out what's on the screen.
Oh boy.
It's all right. Go to share.
Share screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. PowerPoint.
There you go. Perfect. And you want to go
Okay.
back to the
Yes.
first slide. Mm-hmm. You got it.
Go back.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Okay.
Is that the
Now
first
we
slide
have
though?
this.
Go
Yes.
back to your first slide. Is that it? I think there was one. There we go. You're all
Yes,
set.
joy comes in the morning, facing life's trials. And we came up with this because, as Dr. Turner said, there are often times that we go through different trials and tribulations in life. And a lot of times while we're going through these trials and tribulations, we don't always think that we're going to be able to make it through, or we always wonder how we're going to make it through. But I am here to tell you that joy does come in the morning, and joy has come in the morning for me. And with that, I'm going to share my story to tell you how I got through and how God brought me through and how I am still standing. Joy does come in the morning. Okay, we're going to start with insecurities. I like to go back with my story as an 11-year-old girl attending Fairwall Middle School for the very first time. And I can remember being outside at recess, and I saw 3 girls sitting on the hill. These 3 girls had a light complexion, they had long hair, and they had boyfriends. And this was the first time that I can remember not feeling pretty. I can even go so far to say that I felt ugly. And I began to compare myself with them. And the fact that they were light complected, I am light complected, but the fact that they had long hair and they had the boyfriends brought on insecurities that I wasn't even well aware of. And I can just remember my self-esteem just plummeting at that time. And I still can't understand that, why something this profound would be so relevant at the age of 11 years old. but I remember just beginning to compare myself to them. And I asked my mother to buy me an Afro puff. So if any one of you can remember an old fashioned Afro puff, it was the Afro puff, and the Afro puff had the base to it. And my mother brought me the Afro puff, excuse me, she bought me the Afro puff, and I cut the base of the Afro puff. I straightened it and I pressed, my mother pressed my hair, and I would place the Afro puff at the top of my head, the side of my head, and in the back. This gave me long hair. Now I had the long hair, but I still didn't have the boyfriend. And so, with these feelings of insecurity, these comparisons, and my self esteem being the way that it was, it put me in a place of making poor choices for myself. And it would take me through a road of detrimental choices of things that I chose because of the fact that I just didn't feel good about myself. And some of these choices led me into domestic violence. And I'm going to skip from that 11-year-old little girl to now I'm in high school. And I went to a play. I went to a play to see The Raisin in the Sun. It was at Spring Valley High School. And I can remember seeing this person there. And for some reason, he was just so intriguing to me. And I liked him. I had never met him, but he was just intriguing to me. And it was a group of us together. And we began to converse and have conversations with him. But he was interested in the girl that was with me. And guess what? This girl was light complected and she had long hair. So again, here are the feelings of insecurities. Here are the feelings of not feeling good about myself, comparing myself, and just not feeling accepted because of the fact that he liked her instead of me. And eventually we became friends. I don't really know what happened with them, but eventually the two of us became friends. And it was rumored that this person abused his girlfriend. And this was very young. And I'm going to get back into this because we were in high school. And later on, I am going to talk about teen dating violence because it is so prevalent now. But at this time, it wasn't as prevalent, or if it was, I didn't know anything about it. I had never experienced it. But like I said, it was rumored that he abused his girlfriend, but it didn't matter to me because it wasn't happening to me. And eventually we became boyfriend and girlfriend. I moved to Charlotte, he moved away. And one day my girlfriend called me at work and told me that this person was back in Columbia. I went to Columbia. I saw him. And it was though that everything that had been put down 7 or 8 years ago was picked back up. So now I had the boyfriend. He was my boyfriend. And things were good for a while. And things were good for a long time. But I began to notice, now that I look back, I began to notice things that some would consider as red flags. And some of those things were the controlling, wanting to be with me all the time. I took it as that he just really, really liked me. And that's why he wanted to be with me all the time. And that he just wanted to be around me. I thought it was flattering. But now that I look back, it's not healthy because anyone in a relationship, each person should have their own individual lives as well. And it would be the controlling. He would tell me, well, I think you should wear this today, or you shouldn't wear this, or you should do this, or you shouldn't do that. Isolation, trying to keep me from my friends, people that I had hung out with for years and people that I did things with. He wanted it just to be the two of us. He considered us as a unit. We are a unit. And that's all we needed was the two of us. And so those were some of the signs that I look back at, I look back on now, the signs or the red flags that, that was propelling us or propelling me into a domestic violence relationship. And I just want to say with domestic violence, the physical abuse, because a lot of times we equate domestic violence as physical abuse, and there are so many forms of domestic violence. And I'm going to talk about those forms, but by the time the physical abuse comes, all you have already experienced these other forms of domestic violence. And the first time the physical abuse happened, we had gone out and I had to go to work that next morning, and I was ready to go. I was driving and I was ready to go, but he wasn't ready to go. And I kept telling him I was ready to go because I was living in Columbia, and I was living in Columbia and I was driving to Charlotte, and he wasn't ready to go. And I can remember him throwing me in the bushes. And this was the first act of domestic violence. This was the first act of the physical abuse. He threw me in the bushes, and I tried to fight him back, but I was not strong enough, because the more I tried to fight him back, the more aggressive he became. And I just want to say, women, for those that you are watching, we're not strong enough to beat men. We're just not strong enough. We're not supposed to, we shouldn't have to be in a position to have to fight a man. And eventually he allowed me up. He pinned me down for, it seemed like hours. And eventually he allowed me to get up, and we went home. I dropped him off and I went home. And we both lived in Charlotte. We both worked in Charlotte. And the next morning he called and he apologized. And he told me that he was sorry and that it would never happen again. The honeymoon stage. With it happening the first time, I believed him because I liked him so much. I wanted to be in the relationship. I just didn't want the abuse to happen again. So I believed what he said. And this honeymoon stage usually happens right after the act of domestic violence occurs. The abuser calls the victim and he tells her or him, because men are being abused as well, that they are sorry. And this is the part where they lavish you with gifts. They send you flowers. They tell you all these good things. They tell you how much they love you. And baby, I promise, it's not going to happen again. And we as the victim, most of us, that's all we want to hear. We just don't want it to happen again. So we accept the apology. And for a while, things are good. But it doesn't last. It's very transitory. It's very short-lived. It doesn't last for a long time. And the cycle begins to happen all over again. And this was the case with us. And I stayed in the relationship, and I stayed in the relationship far too long than I should have. And the abuse, it began to worsen. And it went from just the shoving and pinning, and he would never hit me. So again, I want to say physical abuse is just not about the hitting, because this person was so cunning. He would choke, and his philosophy with the choking was it doesn't leave a mark. So if the police were called, or if you told someone, there was no mark to prove that it happened. And so it was your word against that person's word. And I stayed. And there's so many different acts that happened during this time. And I'm not going to get into all of the acts that would happen with the domestic abuse, because it's just really not that important. But I do want to talk about the red flags, what to watch for, and like I said before, the controlling. If they're trying to control you, tell you where to go, what to wear, what to do. And this person didn't like for me to wear long earrings. And I can remember we went out one night and I had on long earrings. And I said something that he didn't like. And he just hit the earrings off of my ears and said, I thought I told you not to wear the long earrings. And it was just something that's simple that allowed him to go into this space. Other red flags are intimidation. They're going to try to intimidate you into being and doing what they want you to do. Other red flags will be keeping you, like I said, keeping you from your friends, the touching, the holding, the pushing. And some of you, if you're teenagers out there, red flags would be that if you want to go to class and your significant other doesn't want to go to class, and he holds you to keep you from going to class, or he takes your phone. doesn't allow you to use your phone, or he goes through your phone, because during this time for me, technology wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And technology is so prevalent now. And those are forms of abuse as well. A lot of times the red flags, if they're calling you 5, 10, 20 times a day, just a thread of phone calls from the same person. Or you might tell them, I'm in class, I can't talk right now. Or I'm at work, I can't talk right now. But they continue to call, they continue to harass you. These are red flags. These are forms of abuse, or these are indications that the physical abuse is coming. And then we're going to talk about the forms, the types of domestic abuse. Like I said, most of the time, by the time the physical part happens, that they've already tried to control you. There's always the intimidation, the bullying. You know, they're going to make you do something. They're going to make you be a certain way. Then there's the stalking. Stalking is very big now, because most young kids, I'm talking to the teenagers, and I'm going to refer to this for you teenagers as teen dating violence, TDV. It is very prevalent right now. The stalking, you know, they're showing up where you are. They want to be where you are. They're, you know, you go somewhere, you tell them that you're going somewhere with your friends, and they end up there. And that situation happened to me. I had gone out one night with one of my friends, and we were in the club, and I told my friend, I feel that someone's watching me. I just felt that eyes were on me, and I looked around, I didn't see anyone. And then eventually I saw this person watching me. And mind you, he was from Colombia. He didn't really know anything about what was going on in Rock Hill, but he found me. You know, and again, they're so astute, they're cunning, and they're baffling. And he found me, and he told me that there's nowhere that you can go that I can't find you. And at the time, I didn't know how to take that. You know, part of me was like, wow, he really found me. But then another part was like, this is really dangerous. You know, so those are the things that you need to pay attention to. The verbal, calling you out of your name, telling you that you're not worthy of, you know, telling you that you're no good, you know, maybe using profound language with you. Verbal abuse is very, very prevalent for teen dating violence as well. And then comes the physical abuse. And this is when they begin to hit you, they begin to hold you, they begin to choke you, they slap you. You know, this is the physical abuse. And like I said, by the time this happens, all these other things have happened before. And I'm going to give you a little bit of statistics. Statistics states that 1 in 12 teenagers will be physically abused. 1 in 12 teenagers will be sexually abused. So sexual abuse is another form of abuse. Sexual abuse, coercing you into having sex if you don't want to. And even if it is consensual, coercing you into performing acts that you're not comfortable with, or coercing you into taking pictures, nude pictures of yourself, and you don't feel comfortable with. Anything that's not consensual in the realm of sex, and you're not consenting for it to happen, this can be sexual abuse as well. And so these are things that you need to look out for. And in my situation, going back to that situation, the abuse began to happen. And then with the abuse became an addiction, because I felt so bad about myself. I felt so ugly on the inside. I felt so unworthy. All those feelings that I had as that little 11-year-old girl, I was beginning to have these feelings again. And where I worked, I'm a cosmetologist here in Rock Hill. And the salon that I worked for at the time, there were mirrors in the front of us and there were mirrors behind me. And I could style my client's hair, and this mirror is right here. But I would not look at myself in the mirror because I felt so ugly. I felt so ashamed. Now I went to work, my hair was always done, because that's another thing that I had to do. Each week I had to wear a different hairstyle. So my coworker would fix my hair or style my hair a different way for me every week. And going back to that mirror, here's his mirror. And again, I felt so shamed. I felt so ugly. I felt so unworthy that I was not able to look at myself in the mirror. And I just needed a way to escape because I didn't know how to get out. I really didn't want to leave. I just wanted to end. And so we began to drink. We drank and we began to start with other drugs. We began to incorporate other drugs into our relationship, and I became addicted. And this thin line, I can remember that thin line from recreational to addiction. And now, not only did I have to deal with the domestic abuse, now there was an addiction that came along with this. And I didn't know what to do because it was a repetitious cycle. I would be abused, I would use, I would use, I would be abused. And I didn't know how to tell anyone what was going on because I was too embarrassed, first of all. And one thing about domestic violence, a lot of times we're embarrassed to tell someone what's going on. We don't want others to know. And a lot of times people deem us as being weak because we stay in domestic violence relationships. And it's not that you're weak because, like I say, by the time the physical abuse happens, they've already reeled you in. Not only is your heart in it, your head is in it, your spirit is in it, everything is in. So it's not as easy to walk away from a domestic violence relationship as some people may think that it is. And a lot of the domestic violence relationships, along with the domestic violence, it is drugs. That plays a big part of it because a lot of times the abuser, they're intoxicated, they're high, and this takes them to a different place and it causes them to act out. It causes them to abuse. So a lot of times the two of them go hand in hand. Most of the time, the both of them go hand in hand. And so I just want to say and again, I'm going to talk to the teenagers and anyone, if you're experiencing this, if you're experiencing some type of domestic violence, tell someone, tell someone what's going on. And if you don't want to tell anyone, write it down, keep a journal, have some type of, what's the word I'm looking for? My mind just went blank. Have some type of paper trail is what I'm looking for. Have some type of paper trail that if something should happen, someone could find something that you've written, or you may have some type of record with the police department, or your parents, a best friend, a teacher that you trust, a counselor that you trust, your pastor, tell someone. And if you're not strong enough, that's okay for right now, but start making a plan to be able to get away. In a lot of ways, a lot of times that plan looks like, try to ease your way away from that person as much. If you're used to being with them 5 times a week, maybe go to being with them maybe 3 or 4 times a week or 2 times a week, eventually until you can find your way away from them. And then with the addiction, the addiction became so bad for me that I ended up going back home, in which home is Columbia with my parents. And I ended up going back home. And by this time, my parents were aware that I was in an abusive relationship. And I moved back to Columbia, and he moved back to Columbia as well. And I tried to get clean. I tried to get clean on my own, but I couldn't do it because the pain and the hurt was so much. And the addiction had such a strong hold on me. And I knew that it was bigger than me. And I knew that I needed help. And I was at my girlfriend's house one night and she wasn't there. I had a key to her house and I was there getting high with some other people. And my mother came to rescue me. And I used the word rescue because that's what she did. She rescued me. So we're talking about a mother's love, and we're talking about when we talk about a shepherd. And a lot of times we think about a shepherd as a man, but a shepherd can be a woman as well. It doesn't matter how many sheep a shepherd have. It doesn't matter how many children a mother has. If that one child is in trouble, she's going to do everything she can to save that one child. And that's what my mother did for me that night. She came and she got me and she took me to the emergency room. And for the emergency room, I enrolled into treatment. And I went to treatment. I stayed in treatment for 30 days. So 30 days I was away from everyone. I was not supposed to have any contact with anyone. I was supposed to definitely not have any contact with the person that I was in this abusive relationship with. But I did. I did. I got out of treatment and I went to Narcotics Anonymous. And Narcotics Anonymous tells you to go to 30 meetings in 30 days, find a sponsor, work the program, change your people, places, and things, stay out of relationships. Don't try to analyze the program. Don't try to make the program fit you. Just follow the steps, work the steps, and you will get clean and you will stay clean. I didn't do everything that was told for me to do. I did some of it. I did part of this. I did part of that. And I continue to use. And I used for a long time. It was hard for me to get clean. It took a long time for me to get clean. And the white chip is the chip of surrender. The white chip, the chip of surrender, the white chip of the chip of surrender, or if a newcomer comes to the meeting and you want a new way of life, they give you a white chip. I had so many white chips that if a newcomer came to a meeting or if a person had relapsed and that particular home group didn't have any white chips, I had enough white chips in my car that I could go to my car and get out a white chip. But one thing I did, I kept coming back because they tell you to keep coming back. And I would use and I would go to a meeting. I would use, I would go to a meeting. I would use and I go to a meeting. And I began to get so frustrated because I began to see people that came in Narcotics Anonymous after I did. And I saw these people getting clean. I saw these people staying clean. So now it's time for me to acknowledge that I had a problem, that I had an addiction. I had to acknowledge the fact that my addiction was bigger than me. I had to acknowledge the fact that I could not stop using on my own, and I had to surrender to my addiction. I had to surrender. I had to wave the white flag to, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this my way anymore. And once I start following the program, I began to stay clean. And I had a calendar, and I always mark off the calendar. I would always mark it off the 30 days, and I would never reach the 30 days. And my sponsor at the time told me, she said, just take one day at a time. If you have to take 1 minute at a time, one hour at a time, one day at a time. Don't go too far ahead. Just stay where you are. Stay clean for this day. Get up the next day. Ask God to help you stay clean that day. And that night, thank God for helping you stay clean. And I still do this today. I still ask God to keep me clean today. And I still thank him at the end of the night for keeping me clean. And I can remember this last time I used. And the last time I used was with the person that I was still in this relationship with, because my thought was that if I get clean and stay clean, he'll get clean and stay clean, and we will live happily ever after. I still did not let go of us being together. The abuse wasn't as prevalent, but the abuse was still there. And the last time that I used was at a hotel room. He had called me to this hotel room, and I went against my better judgment. And once I got in the room, there was a jug of my choice there. And I've always heard in Narcotics Anonymous tells you that your higher power, which I choose to call God, always will not put you in a position that he doesn't have a way out. There was a way out for me. He left the room and I was able to leave, and I should have left, but I didn't. I used. I relapsed again. And after I got finished using with him, he told me, he patted me on my shoulder. He said, now we have the same amount of clean time. And this was a setup for me. And I can remember lying in the bed in a fetal position and just thinking about what I had done. And I still remember that feeling. I still remember that fetal position. I got up and I went to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting that night. And I sat in the back, and it was time to give out the chips. Is there anyone here that wants to join a new way of life? People walked up, they were clapping for them. Is there anyone here that has relapsed and wants to start over? I got up and I walked up front. And I can remember the way that everybody looked at me with such disdain and disappointment in their eyes. And I remember that feeling. And I remember the guy that was giving out the white chips. He told me, this is the last white chip that I'm going to give you, because if you don't stop using, you're going to die. That was my last time using. On January the 22nd of 2013, I celebrated 30 years of sobriety. So it's been 30 years since I picked up any drug or alcohol. But I didn't let go of the relationship. I stayed in the relationship. This is January. May, I went to Charleston with this person. And by this time, I was getting really, really tired. You know, I was able to stay clean from the drugs and alcohol. Now it was time for me to walk away from this abusive relationship. And we went to Charleston. And I told him this particular time, if anything should happen, this was going to be the last time. And it did. And when we think about 360, how things come around in a full circle, the last time that he abused me was like the first time he abused me. We were on our way back from Orangeburg, and he pulled off on this obscure dirt road in Orangeburg. And he pulled me out of the car the same way he did the first time. And he pinned me down in these bushes, and he just held me. And I kept telling myself, if I can walk away from this relationship, if I can just make it back home, this will be the last time. I made it back home. And the next day, the guy that I worked for at the time, Antonio Barnes, he called me and told me that his sister had died. And he said, you know, every time I think about my sister, I think about you. Now, see, she died from her abuser. She had walked away from the relationship, but she went back. And the last time she went back was her last time. He choked her the same way that I had been choked. He choked her at the same place that I had been before using. And I went to her funeral and I saw her in the casket. And by me seeing her in the casket, I thought about all of these things. I thought about my life. It's like everything just flashed in front of me. And I thought about, this could have been me. And that was the last time that I was in that relationship. I walked away from that relationship. And the PowerPoint here says ways to seek help. And so we're going to talk about addictions and the different types of addictions, because a lot of times when we think about addiction, we think about drug addictions and we think about alcohol. So there is drug addiction, there's alcohol, there's sex addictions, there's gambling, there's lying, there's pornography, you know, there's shopping, there's eating, gluttony, there's being addicted to toxic relationships. Anything that can make your life unmanageable can be an addiction. And the ways to seek help first is to acknowledge it, that this is going on. And again, just like domestic violence, a lot of times we don't want to feel that we're weak. We don't want to feel that we can't control a certain situation. So we continue in that situation and we try to do it ourselves. And it's bigger than us. You know, other ways to seek help, go to some type of 12-step program, because there are 12-step programs for any type of addiction. Go to counseling. There's counseling. Go to your pastor. You can go to, yes, like I said, go to your pastor, but you have to, and go to God, or whatever your higher power is, because I know we want to be politically correct here. So whatever your higher power is, mine is God, but your higher power, and just seek out these things. And once you're in the counseling, once you're in the 12-step program, once you're in the treatment program, work the steps, follow the instructions, the directions of the counselor, do the things that are told for you to do, and surrender to this, because it is bigger than you. And once you surrender, that's where the freedom comes in. Change your people, places, and things. When I got clean for a long time, some of my best friends that were still just drinking alcohol, I couldn't be around them because I didn't want anything to trigger me, because I had respect, and I still have respect for my addiction because it's bigger than me. So you have to change your people, places, and things. You have to change your way of thinking. You have to change the way that you're doing things. And again, you have to acknowledge that you are an addict. So at these 12-step programs, they talk about, they ask you your name, and you don't give your last name because of it being anonymous, but my name is Gail. I'm an addict. And when you hear yourself saying this, there's something about hearing yourself, acknowledging this about yourself, that sets you up to a life of freedom, that sets you up for a life of being clean. And I left that relationship, and with each one of these things that God had brought me through, getting clean, being able to walk away from the domestic violence relationship, it brought my faith stronger, made my faith stronger in him. It brought me closer to him. And God was preparing me, because he knew that he was going to give me a daughter that was special. He knew that he was going to give me a daughter that was going to need special attention. He knew that he was going to give me a daughter that was going to have to know God for herself. So she was going to have to see God in me. I was going to have to exemplify God in me for her. And he gave me Asia, my only child, at the age of 35 years old. I had been clean 2 years after Asia was born. And Asia was the love of my life. And with any mother, I dawned on her. I was probably a helicopter mom, which I know I was. And at the age of 13, Asia was diagnosed with brain cancer. And we had to go to St. Jude for her treatments. And I can remember being in the hospital and seeing her in the hospital bed and talking to God and just asking him, why is all of this happening? Why is this happening to my daughter? And God told me to trust him, and I did. So Asia had 2 surgeries. She went through high-dose radiation and high-dose chemo. The doctors told Asia that she would be in remedial classes and that she would never go to college. And everything the doctors and the teachers said that wouldn't happen, God had a different plan. Asia went to high school. She was in honors classes. She was in AP classes, and she graduated with a 4.25 GPA. She was on the dean's list in college. And life was good. Life was good for us. In her 3rd year of college, she got sick again. And her father and I went to pick her up. She complained about her throat being sore, and she got sick again. And it was a pneumothorax, and that was a collapsing of the lungs. And her lungs just began to deteriorate. And the doctor seemed to think that was from the high dose radiation that she had to her brain and her spine. And I want to go back to why she was at St. Jude, because she was determined to graduate with her high school class, and she did. So if it's any of you teens that are watching this kid was the kid that stood alone. This young lady was the kid that was so determined that while she was taking chemotherapy treatments, she still did her homework. She still stayed on track with her class work. She didn't let anything wave her for what it was that she wanted to do. And when she got back, she was a different kid because her high school friends, they had gone on, they had experienced in ninth grade. And now she was in a new environment, that coming from an environment that she had just fought for her life. So she was different. She was more mature. And a lot of things she had to stand alone because people didn't understand her. But by her standing alone, it proved that she was okay with being alone. And me still thinking about that little 11-year-old girl that I was, because her hair grew back, but part of it didn't grow back in the back. So I began to bring my insecurities in onto her, asking her, well, why don't you allow mommy to make you a wig, or do you want to wear a wig? And she would say, no, why would I want to wear a wig? Because when I was bald, I didn't want to wear a wig. She accepted her scars. She accepted who she was. And I'm so glad that she didn't allow me to bring my insecurities that I had as this kid and still had at that time in onto her. And because of who she was, she stood alone. She stood alone a lot of times, and she didn't have a lot of friends, but she was okay with that. So for you teenagers that are out there watching, sometimes if you know that you're different, it's okay to be different. And we're going to say unique, because unique is good. You don't have to follow the crowd. You don't have to conform to do what other people are doing. You don't have to do certain things to have a boyfriend. You don't have to do certain things to fit in. You don't have to do certain things to be a part of the clique. And she didn't. And Adria got sick, and I could say she got sick, and her illness deteriorated, her lungs deteriorated very fast. And even while she was in the hospital this time, she was determined that she was going to go back to school her senior year. And we had made provisions at Columbia College, where she was majoring in speech pathology, for her to go back to college. And while she was in the hospital, she still did her homework, because that's how determined and persistent and diligent she was about who she was and what she wanted to do. And me as her mother, I'm looking at her like, this kid is different from me. And I'm beginning to look at my child thinking, I want to be like her when I grow up. And ages passed within a year. And a lot of my friends called and they checked on me, and they asked me, was I okay? Because I always thought if there was anything that would cause me to go back to using drugs, it would be the death of my child. And I didn't want to use, because I knew where God had brought me from. And I knew that if I used, I didn't have the strength to get clean again. And I knew that I'd use, it would be a slap in the face to God. It would be a slap in the face to my baby. And I stayed clean. And I began to be by myself. I stayed by myself for a while. I went back to school. I got my cosmetology instructor's license. I entered York Tech. I went back to York Tech, and I began to love on Gail. I began to love on that little 11-year-old girl. And I began to see myself differently. And I dated myself. I stayed out of a relationship for a while because it was obvious that I didn't know how to choose the right relationships. So I stayed out of a relationship for a while. I stayed out of a relationship for 10 years. I dated myself. You know, I bought myself flowers. I got dressed up for myself. I loved on myself. And it was good because I knew God was preparing me for something else. And I want to go back to that little 11-year-old girl. She grew long hair. I grew hair to here. And one day I was at work and I looked at myself in the mirror and I felt tired. I looked tired. I felt drawn and I didn't like what I saw. And I began to cut my locks. And as I cut each lock off, the more I began to cut, the freer and freer I became. the more freer I felt. And I began to look at myself for the very first time, begin to look at myself in the mirror. And I liked what I saw in the mirror. And this is how Gail Estella Presents the Bald, Bold, and Beautiful was birthed, because I didn't want another 11-year-old kid to go through what I felt. I didn't want her securities. I didn't want the lack of hair to keep her from feeling beautiful. And Gail Estella Presents the Bald, Bold, and Beautiful is for women that choose to wear their hair shaved or bald by choice or circumstance. And our logo is the butterfly. And I want to tell you a little bit about the butterfly. We're going to talk about the stages of the butterfly. The first stage of the butterfly is the caterpillar. And this is the stage where the caterpillar is just crawling around, aimlessly crawling around. And this is the most vulnerable stage of the butterfly, because this is the stage where most of us have done this before. We've stepped on the caterpillar. We've put a caterpillar in a jar. We've plucked the caterpillar. So this is the stage that's the most vulnerable of becoming a butterfly. But caterpillars are destined to become butterflies. And this is the stage that you might have gotten that cancer diagnosis, for you that have gone through cancer. This is the stage that you are in that domestic violence relationship and you don't know how to get out. This is the stage that you're experiencing some type of addiction and you don't know what to do. This is the stage for the ones of you that have lost children, have lost loved ones, and you wonder what it is that could have done differently. Could I have done more? Or in my case, it was, why me, God, my only child? Why did you take my only child? She was a good kid. This is the stage for men, if you're watching, that you're realizing that maybe I am an abuser and I don't want to be an abuser anymore. This is the stage where you're comparing yourself to others. You're not tall enough. You're not short enough. You're not pretty enough. Your hair is too short. Your hair is too long. You're too light. You're too dark. You know, I'm not smart enough. Or I'm too smart, so I want to dummy myself down. So this is the stage where you're vulnerable. And God picks you up and he puts you in this chrysalis. A lot of people call it a cocoon. And he hangs you upside down and he wraps you really tightly, because this is where the metamorphosis takes place. And this is the stage where you're very uncomfortable, because God is changing you now. You're getting to the point that you're accepting, okay, I have experienced a loss, but I can move forward. I don't have to move on, but I can move forward. This is the stage that you accept the fact that I have cancer, that I'm going to take these treatments. My hair's going to come out, but I'm still going to be beautiful with or without the hair. This is the stage that you know that, okay, I'm going to walk away from this relationship because I know I'm better than this. I don't have to be in a domestic violence relationship. This is the stage for you that are the men that, or the women that might be abusers. I don't want to be this person anymore. So this is the stage that God is working with you. And it says that it can take up to 2 years for this metamorphosis to take place. So this is something you have to remember. Everybody has their own place. Everybody has their own time. Not to compare what the next person is doing. You just stay in your lane and allow yourself to evolve into who it is that you're evolving into. It could take up to 2 years, or it could take a week or two. It's up to that person. It's up to what metamorphosis or what change is happening into this, inside of this chrysalis. And once this stage is complete, it opens up and you emerge as a butterfly. But you can't fly right now. Your wings are soft, because God knows that if he allows you to fly too soon, you're not ready. He knows that you may look at yourself in the mirror, you're not comfortable with who you're seeing. You're not comfortable with this new person, because you're still thinking of yourself as that caterpillar. You're not looking at this new person that you are right now, and you're not comfortable with it. And so you're kept right here. You're kept right here until you get comfortable to who you are. And then the wings begin to harden. and the wings begin to harden, and you're able to fly. And we think about when we think about the butterfly, I want you to think about yourself flying away. I want you to close your eyes right now, the ones of you that are watching. I want you to close your eyes right now. And I want you to think about who it is that you hope to be. I want you to think about the person that you dreamt of becoming. I want you to think about yourself free from all these things that you experienced while you were this caterpillar. And while you're thinking about this person and you're thinking about this, you're getting acceptance with this new person. And now it's time to fly. And when we think about the butterfly flies with the wind. It doesn't fly against the wind. It flies with the wind. It allows the wind to take it where it wants to go. So now it's your time to fly. Now it's your time to allow the wind to take you wherever the wind is taking you. Now it's your time to be free. Now it's your time to be that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful butterfly that you are. And again, this is Gail Estella with Gail Estella Presents the Ball, Bold, and Beautiful. And our mission is to empower, uplift, and strengthen women to know that they are beautiful with or without hair. And Dr. Turner, if there are any questions that you might want to ask me before we exit, I am ready to answer any questions that you might have.
First and foremost, I thank you so much for your passion and the time you've taken to tell us about your journey. You are so articulate, and you really took us step by step so our viewers could feel, they could hear, they could almost touch all that you have been through. And we felt that we were right there with you. And then you have turned into this beautiful butterfly. And so thank you for your passion and for your perseverance and sharing your story. One question that came to me is why, and I guess there may not be an answer to this. You knew you were in a relationship that was not healthy. You knew that, and yet you continue to stay. Was it because it was comfortable, or wow? Help us understand, because it lasted for quite a long time.
It did. It lasted far too long. I stayed. First and foremost, I didn't know how to walk away. I stayed because I just wanted the abuse to stop. Because I felt if the abuse stopped, then we could have this fairy tale relationship and live happily ever after. And I saw all these good qualities in this person. And so I want to say this to people that may be experiencing domestic violence, because a lot of times we use the term, this is not them. Because they're this, they're that. This is not them, but this is them. They are who they are at this time. Because a lot of times we want to think about who they used to be or how it used to be, instead of thinking about the present right now, how it is right now. So I think if we get acceptance of that and know that if we don't leave, for women out there that have children and they're experiencing, their children are watching them in a domestic violence relationship, it states that most girls that see abuse in their homes become victims. And 1 out of 10 boys that see their fathers or see abuse in their homes, they become abusers themselves. So you're setting the lineage up for a repetitive cycle, what we call this generational curses. So at some point we have to think about, is this what we want our children to experience? Is this what we want our children to be? Because we don't think about the harm that we're doing to them. And it's just a grace of God, and it's just a grace that I didn't have anyone watching me. So by the time Aja was born, I had been delivered from all of these things.
Thank you for that. Cindy?
There are no questions in the chat, just somebody thanking you for sharing your story. And I can say thank you because that was such an inspiring story. And the way that you referred to the butterfly and how a butterfly develops and whatever, and how it relates to your life and the life of others was just beautiful. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And may I just give these statistics really fast? And I
Yes,
want
of
to talk
course.
about the teen dating violence because we just got out of prom and graduation is coming. A lot of kids are going to the beach. And just statistics states that 1 in 12 teens will experience some form of domestic violence. 1 in 12 teens will experience some form of sexual abuse. And 50% of these teens will attempt suicide.
Mm,
So this
mm,
is very serious. And then in the LGBTQ community is more prevalent because it could be a situation that one partner has come out and they're comfortable with who they are. And then the other partner, they hadn't come out yet. And the other partner threatens to oust them or expose them or bullying them into coming out. So it's very prevalent. And if you're experiencing this, kids, or for anyone, I don't want, and part of this was that I don't want anyone to have to go through some of the things that I went through. And that's why I tell my story. You know, there's no shame in being addicted. For a long time, I held myself in such embarrassment and shame because of my addiction. And I didn't want anyone to know because I didn't want anyone to perceive me a certain way. I didn't want you to look at me a certain way. I didn't want anyone to know about the domestic violence relationship because I didn't want to seem weak. But you're not weak. It can happen. There's no socioeconomic level. There's no lines of education. It can happen. It can happen to you. So if this is you, accept that this is happening to you, acknowledge that it's happening to you, and find a way to get out and to get some help out of both of them and allow yourself to be free.
I love that. And to go to someone you trust. And I know you
Go to
mentioned that
someone you
earlier.
trust.
Go
Mhm.
to someone you trust. There are people, if you are in school, at the school, outside in the community, your family, as you mentioned, the church, a good neighbor, go to someone you trust. I
And
thank
can
you
I add-
again. Yes, go
I
on.
was just going to add two things. Also for people to understand that NAMI is out there, the National Association for Mental Illness, and they have a very active place here in Rock Hill, the Hut, that you can visit and you can look them up online. And then the second place is that some of the QTs in our area are safe places.
Yes.
They have the designation of safe place. So if a teen were to find themselves in that situation and couldn't possibly get home or needed a place to go because they didn't feel that they could go to their family, they could go to some of the QTs and there's an indication, a sign on the door that says that it's a safe place.
Yes. So once again, we thank you. Another message that you shared is learning to love yourself. That is
Yes.
so important. And so you have brought to us so many important messages to the heart. Gail Wright, thank you so much for this
Thank you.
evening's presentation.
Thank
And
you.
we hope that we have you on again.
Yes,
So
thank you so very much.
good night. And Cindy, good night. Good night to our viewers. Everyone have a good evening, and we will see you next week, Thursday. Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.